What's up, everyone? Dave the Data Dude. Today we are going to be talking about the intro to split. This is our first function that is going to be kind of unique to Python in the sense that it's not necessarily just a greater than or equal to, a group by, some common things that we might have seen before in our past travels. So this is a uniquely Python thing, not a uniquely to Python necessarily, but something that we can take that is unique to Pandas and incorporate it into our structure of our data. So first we're going to do import pandas SPD. Data frame is going to equal our Pokemon CSV we've been working with this whole time. But before we get into looking at our Pokemon, I just want to give a brief overview of what the split function will do. So to start, we're just going to have test equals and then some sort of string. This is a string, right? So that's all we're going to do. And from here, we're going to take test.split, right? And that's all it is. All you got to do to call your split variable or your split function is have it assigned to a string value. And you can, by default, it automatically will split it based on a space. So what does that give us? It gives us a list of values based on a space. So this is value 1, is value 2, well, 0 index, 1 index, 2 index, so forth and so on. So you can see that by default, it will automatically split it by a space and put it into a list for you to use. Now, this might not necessarily be something that we would, that doesn't necessarily have anything that would be of value. It may or may not in whatever you're trying to work with, but something that would be more likely to be valuable to us is if we had something that was like a name. So if we had like, Smith John A, right? So this is Smith John A, that's their name. And we wanted to find out a couple, we wanted to split up their name so that we could have it be more easily digestible into our Pandas data frame. We would just say test.split, and instead of doing a space, we want to do a comma because you can see that the difference between them is a comma. So we're going to say comma, and I'm actually even going to put a space here, so it's basically going to remove this because it sees that as the split and puts them into their own unique positions. So split.test, test.split, this is a string. Whoops, why did that not work? Let's just do, oh, because I didn't do this. There we go. So Smith John A. So the reason that didn't work is because I forgot to set the test back to a new string of the Smith John A. So we got Smith John A split into its own individual positions, and you can even, if you wanted to do something like this, test LST, so that's basically assigning the split to a variable. You can say, I want only the first value, and it would only come back with Smith because that is the first value in the 0 index. But that's not necessarily what we're going to work with right now. So we're going to just say we want the whole list. And from here, you have a couple different options of what you can do with your split. And I'm not going to go too deep into these things, but what we can say is you can say max split equals something. So max split will basically say how many times do you want to split this. So we can see just by looking at our data, Smith John A has 2 commas, which means there would be three values in our list, right? Because it's going to split it once, split it twice, and then whatever's left will be the third split. So you can tell it how many splits you want to do. So if you said 2 here, what would that give us? Whoops. No comma, sorry. Smith John A. So it split it twice. So that's how many times the split happened, right? So it split once, split twice. So nothing really changed. But let's say if we change this to 1. Now we can see that it split it only once, right? So it split here and it said, okay, I'm done. And the rest of it's just going to be as is. So Smith, then John A. Okay? So that's just an idea of, if you had, for whatever reason, only wanted to get the last name and then the first name and the middle name could be together, this is a way that you could work with that. Okay? So how can we put this into our Pandas data frame? So we're going to go ahead and look at how we could possibly do that. So we're just going to head right here and take a look at the top 5 rows. And we can see that Venusaur Mega is separated by a space and then Venusaur. So we can see right off the bat that there is at least one option that has something that we could split on. So we're going to say Venusaur split column, not Venusaur split column, just split column, equals df what are we splitting? What column are we splitting? Name dot string. So remember we talked about how it had to be a string variable. This just tells Python that, hey, this is a string variable, treat it like a string variable. And then we can say split, and it will split it based on the space. If there is nothing to split it on, it'll just assign this as the 0 index of a list. So let's look at that, see what that looks like. So we can see Bulbasaur, it didn't have a space in it, so it's just Bulbasaur. It's a list of only Bulbasaur. But here with Venusaur Mega Venusaur, we have Venusaur Mega separated by a comma Venusaur because there was a split, or there was a split occurred. So that's not super useful for us for this situation. So let's see how we can make this more valuable to an actual situation. Let's go back to our first, middle, and last name. Let's say we wanted to split Venusaur Mega Venusaur by first and last name. And we'll just treat Venusaur Mega as first name, Venusaur as last name. So what you would do is, we'll just start over from here, is we're going to give it double brackets. This is basically indicating saying we're going to make a list of new columns. As we've seen that, when you're working with lists that are separated by commas in Python, you need to make sure that they're within brackets. So this is kind of the same idea. So you're going to say first name and a last name. Now remember, this is how we make new columns, because we're basically saying these two columns that don't exist are being set to something. Equals df name dot string dot split. Everything is the same up until this point. And here we're going to tell it split on, we want it to split on a space. And then how many times do we want it to split? We want it to split twice. Once. We want it to split once in this situation. So it's basically going to split it once, and the rest is what it is. And then we're also going to need to write out another thing that we haven't looked at yet. Expand equals true. And what is that going to give us? That is going to take the first and last name and split them into their own columns, and then assign a new column name of first index and second index of our split. So if Bulbasaur was remember that was just a single item in a list, so it doesn't have anything as the second. Ivysaur the same way, but Venusaur Mega, and Venusaur, it did have a split in there, right? So it's going to assign Venusaur Mega over to Venusaur, right? Because that's its first name, and this is its last name, separated by a split. And you can do this for however many splits that occur within your data. I just happen to know that this particular one does have situations where you would have a third split. So you can say middle name, and we're going to say it's going to split twice, and that's going to be it. And we're still going to expand twice. And now we have first name, last name, middle name. Well, to us, this might not necessarily be something that is super helpful to look at, because, it just says none all throughout. So what you can do is you can just do, we can do our lookup, remember, dot lock df middle name dot is not in a. Basically, that's saying I want to see where they're not blank values. And this is a function that you might want to use when you're looking through your data. So I would lock this away for study and review. It's super basic. It's literally just, if there is no data in this column, then show it. And you can probably use it a bunch of different ways, but right now we're just using it right now for this particular column. Does not have null value. And we can see the middle name did have some returns. We got, I guess, Charizard Mega, Charizard X, right? Charizard Mega, Charizard Y. And Mewtwo the same way. But you can see that they have a middle name, and nobody else would have middle names in there. But you can see how you can split out multiple levels of your data. Now, the last thing we're going to look at, and I'm going to try and go through this rather quickly because we're running out of time, is we're going to set our data frame back to the very beginning. The last thing that we're going to want to do is, in certain situations, there will come a time that you are going to want to only find the first value of your data. So what I mean by that is you might have Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur, Charmander, whatever. You don't want Venusaur Mega, or you don't want, Venusaur, it could be anything. So how you would handle that is you would do it like this. So we're going to just say a new column, and this is a split example. And we're going to say equals df, and then what are we working with? We're working with the name column, and we're going to actually do the apply. And what are we going to apply? We're going to apply a lambda function, right? X. And we don't have to worry about referencing it as a string in this certain situation. It's automatically going to do that for us. So we're going to say split, and this should give us the exact same results that we had before when it was splitting on the space. So when it does, right? So you see Venusaur, everything is the exact same as we had up until this point. The difference we're going to talk about now is how, remember I told you that when we were referencing our test string, it was put into a list that you could reference on an index. We can actually, with this lambda function, reference the list that is created as an index. So did you see how that happened? Did you see what happened? Bulbasaur, because it was the 0 index. Ivysaur. But down here with Venusaur Mega, we're only getting back Venusaur Mega because it is the 0 index of what we are working with. Now, this is something that you can work with your data. You could say 1 here. Let's say we said 1 here. What would that do? Well, it's going to error out because not all of our stuff has at least 2 items in a list, so it wouldn't have a 1 index. So you just got to be careful of something like that. So let's just go back to 1 or 0. So we can see all of this happening. Well, what happens if you know that for whatever reason you have things like Venusaur Mega, but you really want Venusaur? The way you do that is you simply come back here and you say -1. And this will essentially reverse the order of your list and allow you to grab the last item in that list. So Venusaur Mega becomes just Venusaur because that is the last item in our list. Now, if we looked at Mewtwo, then we would see that Mewtwo would have just I believe an X and a Y here. So let's look at head. I think 10 should give it to us. Okay, so we saw Charizard Mega, Charizard Y. Okay, you can see that was the only thing to come back because on the split, that was the last item in that list, right? Okay, so this is something that you'll have to kind of play around with depending on what your data is. Make sure that your data is structured in a certain way that this would be feasible. But I wanted to show you all the ways, or at least some of the ways that you can use split within your data so you can start manipulating your data. And this is our first real manipulation of our data instead of just doing built-in functions that add things together or subtract them. So I hope you enjoyed. Let us know if you had any questions or if there's anything that you would like to see so that we can keep bringing you quality content that you enjoy. Thank you very much.